everyone, this is Hemant from Intellipaat and I welcome you all to this session on what is Jenkins. Today in this session, I'm going to teach you guys Jenkins from scratch. So let's go ahead and start with the agenda to understand what all we'll be covering in today's session. So we'll start this session by first understanding why do we need continuous integration, followed by what is continuous integration exactly. After that, we're going to understand what is Jenkins, and then I'm going to show you guys how you can set up Jenkins on your own computer or on an AWS server. After that, we're going to understand the Jenkins master slave architecture, followed by creating the Jenkins master slave on AWS. And towards the end, we're going to create a CI/CD pipeline, which is going to be triggered by a Git Webhook. Alright guys, so this is our agenda for today. I hope it's clear to you. So without wasting any more time, let's go ahead and start with the session with the first topic, which is why do we need continuous integration? Alright, so why do we need continuous integration? Let's understand this using an example. So imagine yourself being in a company and where there are 3 or more developers who have been asked to add features to an already existing website. Right, so in the beginning you all were given version 1 code and you had to work on this code to add your features. So developer 1 had his features to add, developer 2 had his features to add, and similarly developer 3 had his features to add. Right, so developer 1 added his features and he submitted first, right, and he submitted to the source code management system and his code was labeled as version 2. But when developer 2 has to submit his work, he basically added changes to the version 1 code, not to the version 2 code, right? So his changes in the version 1 code had to be integrated with version 2 code, and only then it would amount to become version 3. And at the same time, testing was also supposed to be done. Once this was integrated, testing was also supposed to be done to see whether the new features who have been added to the website, are they not interfering with the already existing features of the website? Is everything functioning normal? So this was the normal routine, or this is a normal, I would say, the life cycle of a software development methodology, right? So once the bugs have been identified in manual testing, everything was given back to the developer saying that, these are the bugs, please fix them. Now, there were problems in this structure. You would say that this seems perfect, but there are some problems in this structure. Let's understand those problems. So the first thing is that because it took a lot of time in integrating things and it took a lot of times in manually testing things, developers used to work on 3 or 4 features together, and at once, say twice in a 6-month time or once in a 6-month time, they used to commit their changes or to the source code management system, and then a manual integration was done because such a large code base is there. So a manual integration took a lot of time because there were a lot of features which had to be integrated, and I'm just talking about 3 developers. Imagine in a company when there are 100 plus developers working in the company, right, and everyone is committing to the source code management system. Now integrating that takes a lot of time, and this was a problem. So first you have to integrate that, and of course after that you'll have to test them, and testing was also done manually, which again took a lot of time. And because of a lot of time in manual integration and manual testing, it affected the time when we will give the feedback back to the developer. Now imagine you submit your work to the company, but you have not got the feedback how your work is. And of course, no person is perfect. Every code that goes through the software development lifecycle will have some bugs that we'll have to fix, right? So the developers used to wait for the bugs to come back from the testing team and took a lot of time, and this led to a big gap in the software development lifecycle. It took a lot of time to develop code or to develop applications with respect to the features that were requested from the application, right? And because of this, there was a high risk and uncertainty when you look at it from the business perspective, because you could not pinpoint on a date which would near to the customer expectations. It always took a lot of time to make changes in an already existing application, right? So these were the problems before continuous integration, and we had to solve this time problem that we have so that our release cycles become shorter, our work becomes more accurate, and because of this we came up with continuous integration. So what is continuous integration exactly? So continuous integration is basically the process of having shorter release cycles by creating small features in our code and simultaneously integrating them to our source code management system. But there's a catch. The integration and testing now happens automatically rather than manually, right? And this is why continuous integration is such a hype, and it benefits a lot of organizations, because not only do you have shorter release cycles, that is, your features are going out every day, but also you have automated integrations and automated testing, because of which a lot of time gets saved, right? So how does the time get saved? Let me prove you using an example. So this is a classic scenario of how things happen these days. So you have a developer, the developer finishes his code and he submits his code to the version control system, which is picked up by the continuous integration tool. Now the continuous integration tool automatically deploys it on the testing server, and the testing server automatically has build suites which have been defined for your application. It tests all the features of the application automatically, and if there are any bugs which are identified, probably a test case failed or something like that, it gives that feedback to the developer, and all of this happens in a matter of minutes, right? That's how fast it is. Now imagine yourself in the earlier world, when I told you it took a lot of time to manually integrate things, to manually test things. So you used to get feedback in days, if not hours. And in this case, that is today, you get automatic feedback in a matter of minutes. And this has led us to improve our release cycles in such a way that today we are getting releases, 2 or 3 releases in a day. Earlier, we used to have releases twice or thrice a year, and now we have 2 or 3 releases every day. Obviously, it's shorter releases, shorter features, but that's how powerful our software development lifecycle has become with the use of continuous integration. And it does not stop here, right? With more mature continuous integration, or with more mature DevOps model, what happens is if your test succeeds, it is automatically also pushed onto production, right? And this is the power of continuous integration. Now obviously continuous integration is just a concept. If you want to implement it, it will be implemented using some tools. So we're going to discuss that in a few moments, but before that, let us summarize what we just discussed, right? So the advantages of continuous integration include frequent commits, and hence small feature updates to our website, but every day or every twice or thrice a week, right? We have automated build and testing that saves a lot of time. It gives the feedback instantly to the developer, and also because of this, there's a low risk and faster delivery of products when you look at it from the business perspective, right? Now, like I was saying, that all of this is possible using continuous integration, but continuous integration itself is just a concept, right? It can be implemented using hardcore tools, and we're going to discuss that in a few moments. So continuous integration is the topic for today, and the continuous integration tool that we're going to discuss today is Jenkins. Now, Jenkins is an open source tool which is basically used for continuous integration. It is based on Java, and a lot of companies are working on Jenkins to get their day-to-day work in the DevOps lifecycle done, right? So this is a brief introduction about Jenkins, and I already told you the features of continuous integration are all of them pertain to what Jenkins can do in your life, right? So without wasting any time, let's go ahead and start with Jenkins by first installing it on your system. So how can you set up Jenkins on your computer? Now there are a set of commands that you would need to run on your Linux box that would set up Jenkins, but there are 2 or 3 ways you can install Jenkins with. If you have Docker installed on your system and you are just into testing, you can have Jenkins installed in a Docker container. So with that, you do not have to set up your environment with Java. You do not have to go through the process of downloading things. Just download that container, and that would have Jenkins up and running on your system, right? But this is a bare metal installation that I'm going to show you guys. So let me just switch back to my server that I've deployed on AWS to see how you can deploy a server on Jenkins. Alright guys, so this is how my AWS server looks like. So what I have to do is I have all the commands written over here in my notepad. So let me copy these commands. The first command will basically install OpenJDK 8 on my system. So let me do that. Okay, so it's unable to update. Reason is we haven't updated. So let me update the system first. Sudo apt get update, and once that is done, I'll install OpenJDK 8. Alright, so now it's installing OpenJDK 8. Next step would be to copy this command. This will basically add the Jenkins key in the repository. So let us do that. All right, so this is done. The next step would be to install this command. All right. So this is our next command. This would basically add the binary of Jenkins to this list. And now we're going to update. So our repository links gets updated. And now let's install Jenkins. All right, guys, so Jenkins is installed. So first of all, let's check the status for our Jenkins service. So for that, we can check it using service Jenkins status. All right, so the Jenkins service is active. So our next step would be to open the ports of the EC2 server. So let us do that. So the inbound connections. Let's open all traffic to be on the safer side. If you want to be more secure, kindly open port 8080 because that is what Jenkins operates on. All right, and let me click on save. All right, so this is done. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to my dashboard. This is my Jenkins master. Let me copy the IP address, and this IP address I'm going to use with the port 8080 to open Jenkins. So as you can see, the Jenkins dashboard is now visible. So the first time you install Jenkins, you'll have to enter the administrator password, which can be obtained from this path. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this path and I'm going to cat over there. So this will basically, so let me do a sudo. So this will basically give me the password, and let's copy it and paste it over here. Continue. And now Jenkins is booting up. So the first screen that you would see is customize Jenkins. So let's install this tested plugins. This would basically install all the plugins that we would require for today's session. So once you've clicked over there, your plugins will start to install. And we're going to wait a while till this finishes. All right, our next screen is going to ask us for adding a user. So let us do that. Let's give the username as Intellipaat, password as Intellipaat. Once you've filled out all the details, let's click on save and finish. And this would bring you to your Jenkins dashboard. So you would get the Jenkins is ready page and just click on start using Jenkins. All right, so this is how your Jenkins dashboard looks like. And we're going to come back to this. But before that, let's just go back to our slides. All right, so guys, we've successfully installed Jenkins on our system. Our next topic would be to understand the Jenkins master slave architecture. All right, how does Jenkins work in the production environment is what we're going to discuss over here. So the Jenkins master slave architecture is basically important to accomplish continuous integration. Reason being, your testing will always happen on the testing server, and your production code will always be deployed on the production server, right? So you always have to deal with multiple machines when you're working in a DevOps environment, and that is exactly why you need Jenkins master slave. So for in this kind of situation where you have to deploy your code to the testing server, Jenkins becomes your master server and your testing server becomes your slave server for Jenkins, right? Similarly, your production server would become slave server for Jenkins, and the master Jenkins will only have the Jenkins installation. Jenkins will not have to be installed on any of the other systems which are serving as the slave of Jenkins, right? The third thing is, why do we need a master slave kind of scenario? So I've seen a lot of people basically just use Jenkins on the same computer where they have to deploy the code as well, and that is because they are not dealing with probably parallel jobs of deployment, or they're not dealing with complex builds. and that is the reason they have it on the same machine. But when you're working on the production environment, you have to have a master slave kind of an architecture wherein the testing and the production server would become slave for your Jenkins master. All right. So now what we're going to do is we are going to set up master slave on AWS, and let's see how we can do that. All right, so the first thing that we have to do is deploy two servers on AWS, that is slave 1 and slave 2, and then we connect it to Jenkins using the JNLP connection. So let's see how we can do that. So the first thing that I'm going to do is let me jump onto my EC2 management console and let me create two slaves. By specifying the number over here, that is 2. So we're going to launch the instances. So our instances are launched. Let us rename them as slave 1. And we have our other, which is slave 2. Now mind you guys, we will not be installing Jenkins on either slave 1 or slave 2. We will be controlling these slaves through the Jenkins master. Now there are some settings that you'll have to do in your Jenkins master. Let us go through that. So the first thing, so this is your dashboard. So the first thing that you have to do is you'll have to go to click on Jenkins and go to manage Jenkins, go to configure global security. Once you're here, just scroll down and you will reach this section which talks about agents. Now over here we are talking about TCP port for JNLP agents. Just change this to random and click on save. Once you've clicked on saves, now we will go to manage nodes, and now we will add a new node. Let's name this node as slave 1, and now click on permanent agent and click on OK. Now over here you will have to add the launch method. You'll have to change it to launch agent via Java Web Start, and the current working directory path, specify that to /home/ubuntu and /jenkins. All right, just specify this and click on save. You will reach this screen. So I'll tell you what to do after this. For now, let's add one more new node. Let's name it as slave 2, and we'll copy everything from slave 1 and click on OK. All right, so everything is the same. So the remote root directory would be this /home/ubuntu and then Jenkins. All right, so slave 2 is also configured. Let us check what we can do now. All right, so the next thing that you have to do is now click on slave 1 and download the agent.jar by clicking over here. All right, so your agent.jar is now downloading. I had one before, so just ignore this thing. So this agent.jar is now downloading, and now I'll have to send this file to my slave 1 server, and I'll show you how you can do that. Right, for now, just click on show in folder, remove the older agent, rename this as agent. All right, and now we'll have to send this to our slave 1, and the way we can do that is by first selecting slave 1, take the IP address from over here. You'll have to download a client called FileZilla. Just open that. In FileZilla, paste the IP address over here. Username would be Ubuntu for the Ubuntu operating system. Port is 22. And in the settings, you'll have to click on edit and then click on settings. Go to SFTP and you'll have to add the key file over here. I've already added that. Just click on add key file. Just go to your key file, select that, click on open, and it'll be added over here. This is important to connect because when you're connecting to AWS, the only method that you can connect to is using your PEM file or your PPK file, and this is the way you can add it in your FileZilla browser. All right. So once you have added that, just click on quick connect, and now you will be connecting to your slave 1. So once you're connected, you will be given all the directories. So here are all the directories. Now I'll have to copy my agent.jar on my slave 1. So just click here and it'll copy your file to slave 1. Okay, so let us also verify that if our slave 1 has been copied or not. So let us connect to our slave 1. So we'll connect it using this IP address. Let us go to putty, click on new session, connect to slave 1, and let us give a special appearance to this. Let us give, let us decide a color on this. So let us decide the orange color. So the orange color is slave 1. So let's click on OK and let's click on open. All right, so login as Ubuntu. Great. So now if I do an ls, I can see that agent.jar has been successfully copied. All right, so slave 1 is done. Now we'll have to do the same thing for slave 2. So let us go to slave 2, download the agent.jar. While it's downloading, just copy the IP address for slave 2, enter it in FileZilla so that we can connect to it. All right, click on quick connect. So you will have the directory listed over here. All right, now we'll go here and we'll rename our agent1.jar to agent.jar, and the way we can do that is like this. So we'll just go here, rename this. All right, remove the older agent file and rename this to agent.jar. Once that is done, just drag and drop it on the server. And now let's connect to slave 2 using putty. So let's click on new session, SSH, add the file, and let us keep the color for this slave as white itself. All right, so this is slave 2, and if I do an ls over here, it's the agent.jar file has been copied successfully. All right, so now the next step would be to basically go to your slave and you'll have to execute this particular command at the place where your agent.jar is present. All right, but before executing this command, we'll have to install OpenJDK on both these servers, that is slave 2 and slave 1. So let us do that. So here's the OpenJDK command. Let us pass it over here. So we'll have to update the server first. So let us update it. All right, and now let's pass the command. All right, so while Java is being installed over here, let's do the same for our slave 1 as well. So let's update it first. So it's updated, and now let's install OpenJDK. All right, so while Java is being installed on this, I think we are almost done on our slave 2. All right, so slave 2, the Java is installed. So what I can do now is I can go to my Jenkins page and go to slave 2, and I can run this command over there now. And this is it. The moment you run this command, can you see it says connected? And the moment it says connected, just come back here, refresh the page, and your slave 2 is now connected. Let's do the same with our slave 1. Just copy this command, go to your slave 1, let's clear the screen, and paste this command. Alright, so now both the slaves are connected to your AWS Jenkins server, and you're set. So if you see the nodes, you have a master now, you have slave 1, and you have slave 2. And this is what we were supposed to do. So let me come back to my slides. All right, so we have successfully set up Jenkins master slave on AWS. Our next task is to basically create a pipeline which would be triggered by Git Webhook to deploy a project on Jenkins. So let us do that. So for that, these are the steps that we'll have to do. So basically we have a project. I've created a project on my GitHub repository. Now this project has a Docker file, and this Docker file can be built to basically deploy a website on Docker. All right, so we're going to deploy a website on our slave 1 first, which will basically act as our testing server. It will be pseudo testing kind of a thing, right? And if our website is successfully deployed on our test server, that is slave 1, it will then get deployed on slave 2, which will be our production server. So this is basically our job, and this should happen automatically. So a Git webhook basically means that the moment I commit on Git, it should automatically trigger a job on Jenkins. It should automatically deploy the website on my website on my testing server first. If it gets deployed successfully, then it should move forward and deploy the same on my production server. All right, so this is what we are going to do. So let us quickly go to our GitHub website to see how our code looks like. So basically this is my code, guys. I have the Docker file, I have the website in here. Docker Compose, please ignore it, we're not going to use it. So we're going to use the Docker file. The Docker file code looks something like this. So basically this is a container which it's going to pull, and after pulling the container, it is going to add the DevOps IQ folder inside the var www html DevOps IQ directory. This is inside the container. All right, so this will get deployed inside my server once I trigger it from Jenkins. Now to do this, first we have to install Jenkins on both the slaves as it is mentioned in the steps. And like it says, like we'll have to configure it in a way that if the build on Jenkins slave 1 is successful, then it should be built on slave 2. Once it's done, we should finally trigger the job using Git webhooks. All right, so let's do this, guys. Let's go ahead and start with the demo so that let's see how it can be done. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is install Docker on both the slaves. So let us go to our putty terminal. Let's go to slave 1 first. Now remember, guys, you will have the connected state over here. Do not close this terminal, otherwise your connection will stop. So what I'll do is I'll just minimize it and I'll duplicate the session so that I can work in a different terminal. All right, so the first thing that we have to do is install Docker. So let's do that. Sudo apt get install docker.io. Okay, so Docker will start installing now. So while Docker is installing over here, let us do the same on slave 2. So just duplicate the session and go to Ubuntu. Now install Docker. All right, so Docker is being installed on slave 2. It has installed on slave 1. Let us check. So docker -- version, if we can do that, that means Docker is installed. Yes, so Docker is installed on slave 1 and is installed on slave 2 as well. Let's check. So sudo apt sudo docker version. Okay, so Docker is installed on slave 2 as well. Awesome. So our first job is done. We had to install Docker. Now our next job is to configure Jenkins to build the project on slave 1. If successful, should be built on slave 2. So for this, we will have to go to Jenkins. So Jenkins is over here and we'll have to create a job. All right. Now you can check the status of your slaves over here. So you can see that master is idle, slave is also idle, and slave 2 is also idle. Now first let's create a job for our slave 1. So our slave 1 basically will have a freestyle project, and let us name slave 1's job as slave 1. So or let's name it as test. Okay. And then click on OK. All right, so the job has been created. Now the first thing that we had to do was to copy our code to the workspace. So let's just clone our repository, or mention the repository link over here, and by clicking GitHub project. Okay, and then go to source code management, click on Git, and mention your repository over here as well. Now because this job has to run on slave 1, we'll have to restrict where this project can be run and select slave 1, right? So slave 1 is job, and slave 1, once you select slave 1, this job will only run on slave 1. Okay, once you've done with that, the next thing that you would have to do is come down and click on add build step. But before doing this, let us check if my job is being built or my workspace is being populated by the Git repository content if I build this job on slave 1, right? So this would basically test our connection as well. So let's do that. So let me click on build now, and this will basically start a build wherein it will copy the Git content on slave 1 ideally, right? So the blue ball basically tells us that the job has completed successfully. So let us click over here, and I can see that it has been successfully been finished. So let us verify that. Let's go to slave 1, and if I do an ls over here, great. So I can see the workspace is there. Let me go inside workspace. All right, so inside workspace, let us see what do we have. We have test. So this is the job name. Awesome. So if you go inside test, do we have the Git repositories content? Yes, we do. All right, so my Git repository was successfully cloned into the test job. That basically means from my master, I'm able to build a job on the slave 1 node, which is great. So that basically means our connection is working fine. Awesome. So let's go ahead and go back to configuring our job, right? So what we want to do is we want to deploy the website which is mentioned over here in this repository to my project. Now the way to do that is by running this Docker file, right? For running this Docker file, I'll have to check what is the present working directory. So my present working directory is this. So let us copy this. And once you come back to Jenkins, you'll have to scroll down and click on add build step. Once you click on add build step, click on execute shell. What will execute shell do? So execute shell is basically used to run any commands that you want to run on the terminal of the other machine that you're trying to build on Jenkins, right? For example, we are trying to build on slave 1 from Jenkins. So what commands do we want to run over there? So I want to run docker build command. So I say docker build, and then docker build, and then the repository where the Docker file is. So it's over here, and then the name of the image that I want to give. So the name of the image would be, I want to say it's test. Okay, so this is the image name. Once the image is built, I'll have to run it. So let's run it on port 80. No, so let's run it on port 82, and then let's run the image like this. So this is the command for running the Docker image that you have just built, right? Once it's built, the next step would be to check whether it's there or not. We can do that on the browser. And I forgot one thing, I'll have to add sudo. And because this job can be built time and again, what we'll have to do is we'll have to remove the older containers which are running on the system, right? So for doing that, I can say that sudo docker rm -f, and for removing all the containers which are running, I'll have to pass in sudo docker ps -a and -q. This should delete all the containers which are running inside my slave one. Now to check if my docker file is building my containers or not, what we can do is we can simply copy the commands from over here. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to build it. Let's build my docker file. So the file is now being built. Awesome. So it's been built. The next thing that I want to do is I want to check if I want to run this command, right? So for running it, the command is this. Let's copy it, paste it over here, hit enter, and my container is now running. So I'll have to check that if it's running or not. So I'll go to slave one, copy this, paste it over here. So, and port number is 82. So I can see the Apache page. That means the container is working. Let's check if our files are being showed or not. So if I go to DevOps IQ folder, yes, I can see the website. So means these commands are running fine. But what I have to do is I have to check if it's running through Docker or not. So I have configured the commands over here, and these commands work on the terminal. They should work over here as well, right? So let us go ahead and save this. Okay, so our job has been saved, and the next thing that I would do is let me remove all the containers which are running over here. So for that, I'll have to do sudo docker ps. Let me remove this container. So the container is removed. Now let's go ahead and run this container, run this job. All right, so now let's go ahead to our Jenkins dashboard and let's build the project now to see if everything goes fine. So I've clicked on build now. All right, so it gives me a failed build. Let's see what the problem is. So the problem is over here, it says the first command sudo docker ps -a-q docker I'm require at least one argument. Okay, so I've got the problem. So the problem is there's no container running over here as of now, right? And that's why it is not able to remove any container, and that's why it is giving me this error. Okay, to solve this, what we can do is for now, let's in the configure part, let us just remove this line, or what we can do is we can start a container over there, right? So let's run any arbitrary container, docker run -it -d and then ubuntu. Let's run it so that there's a container running, because ideally there will be one container running at least on my system. So let's click on save, and now let's try to build the project. Okay, so the build has gone successful. Okay, for checking that, I'll say let's just refresh this, and yes, my website is being deployed over here. Awesome. So let me just do it one more time so I'm sure it's working. So let me just do a docker ps sudo docker ps, and let's remove this sudo docker rm-f, remove this, and now let's run our arbitrary container. Let's ensure that this website is now not working. So it's not working. Now let's build this project. All right, so now if I come here and I refresh this, yes, so the website is working successfully. Awesome. So it works on slave 1. Let us now configure the same thing in slave 2 as well, right? So let's come back to our dashboard. So the test job, this could be our arbitrary test job. So basically we are trying to deploy it on a server. If it gets deployed successfully, we are going to deploy it on the prod as well. So let's create a new job and let's name it as prod. Freestyle project, click OK. And the GitHub project is going to be the same, this one. Let's paste the URL over here. And we have to restrict this to run on slave 2. Great. The source code management is this Git repository. And the build step also would be the same. So basically we want to delete all the containers which are running right now. So for that, it's sudo docker rm -f $docker ps -a and -q. Okay, next step is to build the file. So do sudo docker run -it -p, and we want to run it on port 80 because it's production, right? And the image name is test -d and test. And before this we forgot one command, which was sudo docker build, and then the directory, which is /home /ubuntu /workspace / the job name, which is prod, and then over here the docker file would be present, and I want to name it as say production. The container name would be production, and over here also the container name would be production. Awesome. So let's click on save, and let's now try to build it. But before that, we'll have to launch one container on test. So let's run an arbitrary container. All right, so container is ready. Now let's check by clicking on build now if this job is working fine. So I've clicked on build now, and if you want to see the console output, we can see it over here. Okay, so it says job failed, and the reason for that is got permission denied. Okay, so the problem is I forgot to add sudo. So let's add sudo. Let's add sudo over here, and that should be it. Let's click on save and let's try it again. Okay, again we have a problem, but I think it's a new error, so let us try to resolve that. So it's unable to prepare context, and the path is /home /ubuntu workspace and prod not found. Okay, so let's check if this path exists. So if we do an ls, we have Jenkins. Okay, let's go inside Jenkins. If we do an ls, okay, so workspace is over here. So basically I'll have to change the path to /home /ubuntu /jenkins /workspace /prod -t and then production. Click on save. Let me check if there is a container running on my slave 2. If there is no container running, then I'll have to run one. So sudo docker run -it -d ubuntu. Okay, container is running, and let us also ensure that we do not have any website running on our slave 2. Okay, so this is the command that we are getting right. This is the output that we're getting right now. All right, so let's click on build now and let's see if our build is successful. All right, so it's getting built. Let's hope for the best. Let's hope it's successful. All right, so it gives us a blue sign. Blue means that build was successful. Let's try to refresh over here. And yes, it works. Now let's just go to DevOps IQ folder and see if our website is up and running. Yes, so our website is up and running. Awesome, guys. Now, what I want to do is I want to trigger. So first, I want to trigger prod job only when the test job is completed. Now, let's see how we can do that. So we'll go to configure and let's see if we can configure this. All right. So I'll have to go to test job actually. Let's go to the test job. Let's go to configure. And over here, I'll have to go to add post build actions. Okay, let's click on that. And after this, we'll say build other projects. Click on that. And which project to build? I want to build prod and trigger it only if the build is stable. So if the build passes, only then it should start with prod. Okay, awesome. Great. So let's click on save. And if my test gets succeeded, then my prod job will run. All right, so let us check this as well. So let me try running it. So we can run the test job using a pipeline view as well. So if you just have to come back to the dashboard and over here you'll find both your jobs. Just click on the plus sign that you see over here. And once you click on the plus sign, you should be seeing a build pipeline view option over here. If you're not, so that means the plugin is not installed. So let's install that plugin. For that, you have to click here, go to manage Jenkins, and then click on manage plugins. Click on available, and then search for build pipeline. Build pipeline, select it, and then install without restart. Just click on that. All right, and now your plugin will start to install on your Jenkins server. All right, so my build pipeline plugin is installed. Let us go back to our dashboard, click on the plus sign, and you can see there's an option now which says build pipeline view. Select that and name this view as CI CD or anything that you want, right? Click on OK. All right. Everything seems fine over here. Build pipeline view title, let's name it as CI CD. Okay. Let's click on OK. All right, let's check. So in my CI/CD view, I just see the prod job. So let's see how we can fix that. So I want the test job to also be there. So let's see. So let's click on configure and build other projects after the test is done. Okay. Okay, so we forgot to choose the initial job. So the initial job will be test, right? And let's click on OK. Okay, so now it looks good. So the test job will be executed and then we'll have the prod job executing. Okay, let's try running these jobs by clicking on run. All right, so as we can see, our test job started and then our prod job started and it completed. So this completed in 1.5 seconds and this completed in 1.5 seconds as well. And both of these have these websites. Awesome. Now what I want to do is I want the moment I commit on my GitHub, this should trigger my Jenkins job. So for doing that, let's uh, go over here. That is my Jenkins dashboard. And let's try doing that with test. Okay, so we'll click on test and we'll click on configure. All right, and yes, so in the build triggers option, just go to GitHub hook trigger for Git SEM polling. All right, and just click on save. The moment that's done, just come back here on your GitHub. So for configuring your webhook, all you have to do is click on settings and click on settings, go to webhooks. Inside webhooks, click on add webhook. And now just copy the IP address and port number of your Jenkins dashboard or your Jenkins page and paste it over here /GitHub hyphen webhook. Specify that and click on add webhook. If the response is received by Git and everything works fine, it will give you a tick, which means everything is working fine, right? And just go back to your dashboard and you can see that everything works out. Great. Now, what we have to do now is we'll have to push a commit on GitHub and that will automatically trigger a build over here. So let us check that. So we'll just open this over here and we'll go on our master. Let us trigger a build. So this build can be triggered from anywhere. I'm just doing it on master for the sake of simplicity. So I'll just do a git clone of your repository. Git clone. All right, everything is done. Now I have something on my I have a website, right? So what I'll do is I'll change the contents of that website and let's see if that content is visible on our servers as well. So I'll just change the index file. The first thing that I'm going to change is the title. So I'll change this as Jenkins prod website. Okay. And let us change the image as well. So I have one more image over there. So let's name the image as 2jpeg. Great. So now let's push this on Docker Hub. So let's add it, commit it. All right. And let's push it now. Git push origin master, the username and the password. All right, so the push has been made. Let's check if anything is triggered over here. So as you can see, the test got triggered and now the prod also got triggered. So both the jobs have been successfully completed just on a push. Let's verify that. So this is my, so let me see which one is my slave one. So slave one is 108. So let us see. Okay, so this is my slave one. Let us refresh this and see which website is coming. As you can see, the background got changed and as well as the title also got changed. Similarly, if this job is successful, it should also be triggered over here. Let us check if the website is also pushed here, and yes. So the job is also pushed here. Awesome. So let us try this one more time. And with this, let us try to bring back the same uh, background that we had, right? So let's do a nano on index.html and let's change the title to Jenkins final website and let's change the image name to 1.jpg, which was the earlier image. Save it. Now let's push it on GitHub. So we'll add it, commit it, and now let's push it. All right, so our code is now being pushed. It's been pushed. Now let's come here and see what is happening. So our job should now be running. So test got completed. Prod is being completed. So prod is running right now. And prod also got completed successfully. Awesome. So let's check if our website got changed over here. So this is my testing server. So the title got changed and even the background. Let's see for our production, and even our production website got changed. So awesome, guys, we have successfully completed what was asked to us in the hands-on. So we were supposed to create a Jenkins pipeline, which would basically, if slave 1 job is complete, it should be built on slave 2, and the job should be triggered by a Git webhook, and that we have done successfully. All right, guys, so I think we are done. So thank you guys for attending today's session. I hope you guys learned something new today. So if you got any doubts that you have that you're doing this session, or if you got any errors while doing the same demo as I was doing, you can post it down in the comments section and we'll be happy to answer it for you. All right. So thank you guys for attending today's session. I hope you have learned something new today. So see you again in the next session. Goodbye and have a great day ahead.